Hi, my name is Jim Fessler, and I'm here with my Apple Seeds podcast and my continuing adventure into the podcasting realm with my Project Forward program. And just wanted to go back and mention to you what Apple Seeds are. What I like to call this podcast is that because I'm using thoughts, ideas, and discussions that you can collect and gather and interject into your own mind and business and hopefully grow into an abundant financial future. And tonight I have a young go-getting guy named Kyle Kurzhal, who's a sub-2 student at Pace Morby's mentorship program. We've got to know each other a tiny bit through a online Zoom program that we go to. And so I'd like to introduce you guys all to Kyle as I bring him up. Hi, Kyle. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Jim. I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. So like I was mentioning, my podcast is called Apple Seeds. I like to drop in some ideas from different people, that their thoughts and ideas about how they're growing their real estate adventures, and just a little bit about them. Since I don't know a whole lot about you yet, I do know you're a young dad. I don't even actually know where you live at, but I do know you're a young dad. I do know you're into the sub-2 mentorship. Can you give me a bit of an idea who is Kyle? What's Kyle all about?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I always, when somebody asks me to describe who I am, I always lead with that I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. That's my first and foremost identity. Anything good that you may see in my life, it's all because of him. So that's the thing I got to always lead with, right? It's to God be the glory. So, secondly, I like you said, I'm a dad. I'm a young dad and a husband. I've got a little boy, and right now he's loving life, full of energy. And so this is an exciting time in my life right now.
How old is he?
He is 3 going on 4. So you can imagine all the shenanigans.
Time for sure. Yeah.
Yes. And it's great. I love it. I love it so much. I am, like you said, a sub-2 student. I also am a Gator method student. I'm only about 2 months into both of those programs. So I joined both of those at the same time. And so I am actively learning. And I've kind of found a little niche that I like is what I like to call a funding connector. And we can get into more of that later if you'd like. I reside in North Alabama, but I do business across the states. So thankfully, being a connector really doesn't have any boundaries other than your imagination and the connections that you make with folks.
That's interesting. And so, have you put any deals together in your general area there, or how did you start finding that connector part of what you're doing? I know it's interesting you bring that up, because that's kind of a little bit of what I'm working with. And we're basically, other than I'm a Gator lender. I'm not on the sub-2 side. But we have about the same time in as far as being in the program. And I'd be interested. I know I've seen a little bit of what you've posted online and some different things you're doing, and I'm interested to hear how that's growing for you.
Yeah. I'll say that because I'm so new, that I just have not had the chance yet to really, well, we'll say it this way. There's a lot of room for growth, for sure. So the way I kind of got into the funding connector stuff, so to speak, is that when I was trying to figure out my avatar, I started with all these different things that I was super interested in. Obviously I was interested in the Gator stuff. But at first I was also thinking, man, I want to be a closer. Like I'm understanding all of these acquisition strategies and these exit strategies on the sub two side. And that sounds really interesting. I feel like I can connect with people pretty well and explain things. Um, so I was aspiring to be a closer and also to do some lead gen. And then also I wanted to do the Gator stuff, and I wanted to buy and hold real estate long term, and I wanted to acquire businesses. And you can see how this goes on and on. And it's just like I came to realize very quickly that it just was not going to be feasible just getting started. Um, so I have some like long-term visions that I want to fulfill. But I need a starting place because I really don't have a prior background in real estate. So a lot of this stuff is new to me. And like I said before, there's just so much room to grow. So what I as I was kind of dabbling in some things, and um, I had at one point started to kind of work with a small team of folks who were newer and they were trying to acquire properties. One of the things that I saw that was a big struggle for them was getting funding to be able to acquire these deals. And then I started to see this happen over and over in the sub two community. Like I see people posting, hey, I need X amount of money for this long. And then I wouldn't see anybody respond to them. And so I was like, okay, there's a need here and I'm seeing it not get filled. So can I do something here to fill that need, to provide value to people, learn along the way, and then fulfill the goals, at least the short-term goals that I'm looking to meet. And so that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah, that's it. It's interesting because I'm hearing you talk, and I'm hearing my story, because I had no real estate background at all. And in fact, I laughed that I told somebody initially. I said my real estate, before coming into this, my real estate background was I bought the house I'm in right now back in like I think it was like 1994. That was my real estate background, and then just recently we went through some with some family passing and stuff. We went through some probate issues and dealt with that, and that's really that's really interesting. But I started finding myself doing the same thing that you're doing. I was like, okay, I want to go here, I want to go here, and then all of this is coming up, and I started coming to the same conclusion. So I realized my little niche that worked for me was the kind of the underwriting and comping. And so I kind of grabbed on that, but I also grabbed on the funding side. And so it's funny how, that seems to be, you get in there and there's just so much, you have,
Yes.
it's like it's coming from here and here and here. And especially in this community. And so you got to kind of find your way to pick your little niche. You mentioned, I heard you mention Avatar, and I've heard that a few times. And could you maybe explain what you mean by Avatar? I know there's probably some people on here that have heard, that maybe will see this, that have heard of that. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they're thinking of blue people that live in a, in a beautiful forest, or what. I think that's what that movie was called, right?
Yeah.
But could you maybe expand on what you meant by that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I would describe it is essentially the role that you play in the economy of the sub two community, the sub two and Gator community, really, because they're kind of separate, but they're also a cohesive unit. Like they're meant to be very complementary. So Pace has defined various forms of avatars in these communities. Some of those include like being a closer, somebody who can like talk to either a seller or like a real estate agent and walk through things, explain like, okay, this is how maybe a subject to purchase would work or a seller finance purchase would work. And then walking that person from the start all the way to the finish line. There are folks who are very focused on like private capital raising. There are folks who are integrators. These would be the very technically minded folks who like to connect all the pieces behind the scenes. They're not really interested in getting out in front of folks, dealing with sellers day to day or anything like that. There are folks who are visionaries, which are more like the big picture people. They usually need like an integrator to partner with them. There's gators. So you and I are in that group of avatars. There's connectors, and I fit in that as well. So there's several more, and honestly, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head because there's really they're representative ultimately of all the different opportunities that exist, the different roles and opportunities that exist in the ecosystem to be able to support one another, because ultimately you have to do business with other people, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think you find what I'm finding is because you can't take on everything. Well, you can try, but
No, you can't.
it doesn't work really well. There's
No.
just not enough time in the day to be able to do that. I feel like I am I have a daughter that put herself through a university program, and she was working full time 50 hours a week and going to school full time and had an internship. And I told her not too long ago, I said, I've always been proud of you for what, how you did that and everything you did. But boy, do I have a whole different level of understanding working a full-time job now and going through this, learning, and learning everything. Let me bounce away from the real estate a little bit and just for a minute. And did you grow up in Alabama? What's a little bit about your history? Were you into sports of any kind? What did you do? What did you do growing up?
Yeah, well, my folks are originally from California, and they moved here when I was very small, like when I was 2 years old. So effectively, I grew up in Alabama, but I didn't really have any roots here. So I kind of grew up seeing some of the culture, but never really like having adopted it into family life, so to speak. Um, any Southern culture that I now have integrated is because of my wife. Because she her family is from the South, and she grew up here. So as far as like my interest in everything growing up, I was I when I was younger, like high school, I played a lot of like tennis, and that was a big thing for me. Um, that was all I spent my time doing, and so I go out on the court and play for hours and hours in the blazing hot summer heat, and I loved it. It was
Yeah.
great. Um, I aside from that, I really, you know, I kind of bounced around to a few things, but um, yeah, not really anything super interesting about my background that would make you think that I would end up where I'm at today necessarily. Um, I
And
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
that was kind of my way of doing that. I was kind of wondering where, how your life meandered along and you come along to the point that we're me and you are kind of on, the opposite ends of the spectrum where you're still young enough. I'm guessing mid 20s or so.
I
at
appreciate
best.
that compliment.
Well,
I just hit 30, so I'm in the
okay. Well,
30 club.
high mid 20s then, right? Uh, and I'm at the other end where I've already, I put that I put that lifetime in and raised my kids, and now I'm into the grandpa phase, and I'm looking at it, and so it's interesting to, I wondered how that path growing up,
Mm,
which it doesn't sound like there was really anything that kind of pushed you in that direction. So
no.
at that point, what was it that made you maybe look into what Pace is doing? Were you looking at something else, or were you did it just happen? Did it fall in your lap? That's kind of what happened with me a little bit.
Mm.
But did it just kind of fall in your lap? Was it something you were looking to go into, or did it just kind of fall out that way?
Yeah, for me, it was related to my interest in business acquisition. So, um, to back it up a little bit, I have a background. My day job is working as a software engineer. So I do for folks when sometimes when people hear that, they're like, what in the world is that? Basically, I'm a programmer. We can simplify it that way. So um I'm the type of person who has generally been interested in making new things, and I've always been kind of interested in starting a business. I have always had various ideas come up. If you ever talk to folks who have been around me and heard me brainstorm some crazy ideas, it's like Kyle is like a wild man. Like I, at least maybe I think I'm a little crazier than I am. I don't know. Maybe I am that crazy, but I have all these. I've had all these ideas and wanted to implement them, but I've always struggled to really like find a good market up front for it. And then figure out like, okay, how do I take it from start to profitable? And so, um, I started to, as I was looking into business related things, eventually I came across Cody Sanchez's stuff where she talks about the idea of buying boring businesses. And I was like, oh, wow, this really resonates because I'm interested in business. Um, I have a lot of skills to be able to handle like automation, because that's one of the things she doesn't necessarily specifically talk about automation, but one of the things that she does talk about is taking something that's an older established business that needs updated processes, to be able to be more profitable, um, and then making it grow that way. And I'm like, okay, well, we're in the internet age. I have the skills as a software engineer. This is I think a good fit for me because I have interest in business. I have goals long term to do more than just work a W-2. Um, you know, I'm of the perspective generally that work is a good thing, but what one of the things that feels a little constraining to me is that there's no room for me to grow. Like I'm capped in my day job,
Right.
and I feel like I have all these ideas and things I want to do, but being just having to do like my standard W-2 stuff, as great as it can be, it does feel a little constraining. And so for me, I'm thinking, okay, well, I can go and take something and make it better. I can implement my vision for what um, what growth would look like for various businesses that could use some updates. Um, so that's kind of what initially got me on this path of Pace, and ultimately I came across Pace's content through YouTube. I guess because I was looking into um, at one point I was researching a business to acquire, and they didn't have the collateral that I would need to be able to get a loan from a traditional loan from a bank. So I needed non-traditional financing. And so as I was researching that, I guess the YouTube algorithm was like, hey, go look at Pace's stuff because he talks all about creative finance. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is very interesting. A completely new take on doing real estate acquisitions. In my views, at least different from anything I'd ever heard, because everything I'd ever heard was from like Bigger Pockets. You know, you have to save up a lot of money and then put it down into the property, and then you've got to wait a while to be able to refinance it out and all this stuff. And I'm like, but then you're not making much cash flow. And so I was like, okay, that's cool, but I don't think that's for me right now. And Pace's stuff was like, oh, wow, this is a completely new set of tools that you could use to build a portfolio. And then I saw his Gator stuff and I was like, oh, this is a good way to build some capital, you know, and build up those connections that I would need personally to be able to do financing of any businesses that I would want to acquire. And so that's kind of what got me really into like the Subto and Gator community ultimately. And I decided like a crazy man to join both at the same time. And so
That's a
I'm
big
glad I
leap
did.
from my understanding.
Oh, it's a lot. It
Yeah.
is so much. I'm glad that I went through everything because I had this, I guess, more holistic viewpoint of the ecosystem that I think I wouldn't have gotten if I had just joined one versus another. So there's that benefit, but I did have to niche down.
Yeah.
So my long-term goal is still to do business acquisitions. The zero down stuff that he's doing right now is really good, like really, really good. And it's just going to get better. So I'm enjoying that. And that's kind of that's again, I'm not really veering too much from that path, but my short-term goal is to build up those connections that I would need for Gator and helping other people with funding, connecting, and everything in the meantime. So there's a lot there. Sorry, I just rambled.
No, I mean I am listening to you, and I'm going. Kyle's telling my story. We reversed a little bit, in the sense that I was looking for something myself, but I went through Matthew McConaughey's Art of Living program because I was just looking for something. And I'm not too ashamed to say as a guy that I'm, kind of man crush a little bit on Matthew McConaughey. I mean, I love his movies. I love listening to him speak. I listen, his, and I went blank, right? I was going to say it, but his book that he put out, Green Lights, really affected me. I listened to that book and it just really grabbed a hold of me. And then he came out with this Art of Living program, and it had Dean Graziosi. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's with Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. Mm-hmm. And so I found Dean through that, and then through Dean and following him because I really resonated with him, I found Pace, and I had no idea who Pace was. I never heard his name, didn't have any idea who he was, didn't know anything. And I'd always followed real estate a little bit, but not anything I never pulled the trigger on it. I never found anything that just really made me want to make that jump. And there's a long story, and I'm interviewing you, not me, but there was a way for me to get from where I was to that. And I saw that through Pace. And then I found Cody Sanchez through the same thing. I'm looking at the real estate, but I'm also looking at the business side over here. I'm like, I kind of like that a little bit more than I like the real estate side. I've owned my own business. I run a shop for somebody else right now, and we do really well. And I see how there's some things that I can do there. And the Gator side of it, just like you mentioned, it's like we kind of have a little bit of that same, me and you have that little bit of that same vision where we see gator that gator is allowing to bring it. And it sounds like Paces bring it. I haven't really heard a whole lot, but I've heard some hints that along the line of what you're seeing on the Subto side with the zero down, it sounds like there's something coming into the Gator side that's going to really elevate that. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to that. I guess what I'd kind of like to finish up with is I talked in the beginning. I call the podcast Apple Seeds, and what I'd like to finish up with my guests is, do you have, with that apple seed, thinking of the apple seed as something that you can plant and grow and nourish and turn it into something? Is there something that you would consider that was an apple seed for you that you could share with somebody, or you think that you think is something that you could pass along, and maybe they could plant it in their own mind or plant it in their business and might help them down the road in the future?
Yeah, I think I'll speak to something that's kind of, I think was something that was eye-opening to me, that really kind of drove me into this role of funding connector. The thing I came to realize was you have to do business with other people. And that sounds like a really obvious statement, but so many times, how many times have you tried to just go do something by yourself, and then failed because you didn't band together with other people to get the job done? That has been a reoccurring thing for me in the past, in which I have always tried to maybe do something by myself, and ultimately, because I tried to just do it by myself and not involve other people, it ended up being unsuccessful. And so what I'm seeing, just, it was more of an observation, honestly, that those who are working together in Subto and Gator, those are the folks who are successful. The people who are trying to be their own lead generation and their own closer and their own disposition team and their own capital raiser and all these things, there are a few folks who might be able to do it, but the vast majority of people can't do that. You are much more likely to be successful if you band together with other people. And so I think that was the one big eye-opening thing for me. And I just kind of came to realize, okay, well, I need to make connections with people, so that way we can all do business together and we can all win. And that was, I think, the thing that initially drove me into being a funding connector. I realized that there were not just short-term benefits, but there's long-term benefits from forming those relationships with people. And I'm still learning about it. I'm at the starting gate, just to be honest. But at least I'm starting. And the more I iterate on it, the better it's going to get. And the cool thing about it to me is that it's not just for your personal benefit. It's also for the benefit of the people around you. And there's this like compounding effect that happens. So the more people that you connect with, it's like you're compounding the number of potential opportunities for everybody. And you never know, like, if you're going to do business with one person one day, or 10 weeks down the road, or a year down the road, or whatever, or maybe somebody you met one day is a perfect fit for somebody else that you met, and you help connect them. And it's like, wow, there's new opportunities that just wouldn't have existed if you didn't make those connections and build those relationships. So I think that's the big thing, the apple seed for me, that kind of changed my perspective on things, and one of the ways in which I'm growing right now.
Yeah. So that community and learning that you can use the community to not only your benefit, but to their benefit.
Yes.
Makes a big difference. And I'm finding that, and I'm growing with that too, because I've always been a pretty independent person, and I found the same thing. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing that, because it's something that I'm going through and I'm learning from, and I'm sure it's something that everyone can learn from. And it's definitely something this community, then in our mentorship that we're involved with, has really, really shown itself to be over and above a lot of anything that's out there anywhere else.
Yep.
I want to thank you for taking the time to come and share with me, and spend a little time telling me about who you are and what you've learned and your growth. And I look forward to more interactions together, and maybe doing some deals together. And sounds like maybe we can chase some businesses together down the road. It sounds like that's both a direction both of us are looking to head. So that might be fun down the road.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So I will close this up now. And if I could ask you to hang out for just a minute so I can close down the recording side of this. And I'll thank you thanks again very much, Kyle. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim.
Right. That's the end of this one, and made it through number 2. And I thank you for being here, and thank you for watching this. I'm learning to grow a little bit at a time. And like Kyle said, I'm trying to gather information from the community at large to help me become a better person, and learn and grow in what this Project Forward program is, and our branding program, and learning this podcast. I'm learning that I kind of like this, and enjoy the interview process, and learning new things about new people and meeting them. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Kyle, and look forward to having new, exciting people come along and provide more ideas and more apple seeds to share. Thanks again, and thanks for watching tonight.